Hey everyone, welcome to the Stone Rip Current Ryan Robert R&R Coconut IPA Q&A video. I put a previous video out there asking if you guys would like to have a Q&A video, and you respond back with a bunch of questions, so I'm going to do one. Hopefully we'll get to a live cast at some point. I need to figure out what's the best day to do a live cast. For me, that might be like Sunday, maybe early afternoon on Pacific Standard Time, or possibly Thursday evening. Those are probably my best two times, at least the times that I'm least busy, wouldn't be out and about doing something. So let me know if you prefer either Sunday or a Thursday. Can maybe do a Wednesday evening one, but it's going to be pretty late if it's a Wednesday, Thursday after I get home from work. So I'm guessing maybe a Sunday afternoon Pacific Standard Time might be the best time to do it. Let me know. Alright, so first off, the recipe, I'm going to give you the Stone, what I call the Stone edition of Coconut IPA, because like I've mentioned before, the hops in the batch at the competition were a little different, and we had to come up with a different blend for the beer, but the malt base is the same, the yeast is the same. We're using Cal Ale 001 from White Labs. I mean, it's pretty standard ale yeast, right? You can also use the San Diego Super Yeast, which is actually what I've been using my last couple batches of it for the homebrew version. That's the White Labs WLP 090, and I really like that yeast because I think it works quicker than 001. It flocculates a little bit better, and to me it leaves a lot less krausen in the fermenter. So going with that yeast lately. So the malt bill on the beer is roughly 79 to 80% American two-row. And then we're using roughly somewhere between 9 and 10% Belgian Pilsner malt. Then we're using almost 5% Munich malt. And then there's about 3% Carapils, dextrin malt, about 3% honey malt, and then I haven't been using it lately because I've been using gypsum to adjust my mash, but if you want to lower your pH, you can use some acidulated malt. So if I were to use that, I'd sub in maybe at least a half a pound, if I had to guess. So make your adjustments, but for like well actually no, I have this as a 6-gallon batch. It'd be 12.5 pounds of two-row, pound and a half of Belgian Pilsner, 3/4 of a pound of Munich, half a pound of Carapils, and half a pound of honey malt. So that's the malt bill. It's a little more complex than it probably could be, but I like the characteristics of everything. That the Pilsner, you can play around with that, and that's what I want to do. Replacing that maybe with sugar, dialing back the percentage, replace it with sugar, and then maybe up just the pale malt base more. I've had ideas of maybe trying wheat in replace of the Pilsner malt, or rye. Play around with it, see what works for you. As far as the hopping goes, at Stone we did a first wort hopping of Centennial. And I did that for my last batch. It turns out I did put everything in ounces, so it's like almost an ounce, 0.92 ounces of Centennial. Now everything's going to depend on your alpha acids for your hops, right? So I'll just go with IBUs. You're going to want roughly 25 IBUs of Centennial for first wort hopping. Most of this beer, at least the homebrew version, the bitterness comes from all the hops in the back end, towards the end of the boil and flame out. So you're going to get a good chunk of your IBUs. Target IBUs are going to be around 70 to 75. You want to target around 7.3 to 7.7% ABV. Estimated original gravity somewhere around like 1068, and then you want to finish around 1010. Pretty much every time I brew it, I'm right at like 1010 or maybe 1011. It might depend on how big of a starter I made. So let's see, the 10-minute additions are Amarillo for about 10 IBUs. I'm going through the recipe here. Helga, about 5.7 IBUs. Belma 6.8 IBUs, Calypso 8 IBUs. I used Citra instead of Simcoe in my homebrew version, but we use Simcoe in the Stone version, so another like 7 IBUs. And then that's all at 10 minutes to go in the boil. Everything else was flame out in the homebrew version. So once again, I'm hitting it with more Amarillo. I think everything but Calypso. I didn't do a flame out edition of Calypso. And they're going to dry hop with everything. Dry hop's about an ounce per hop. Want to be right around an ounce per gallon of hops. Somewhere close to that range. So, I mean, that's pretty much the recipe. I'll try to get it printed out and put it down below, because this is going far too long as far as getting to the questions. So, first up, Glitch Brewing. He was definitely interested in how I use the coconut for flavor and aroma. And I just talked about the recipe. I mean, the recipe was, let's get really fruity hops, hopefully tropical, and have the coconut play off that. The malt being supporting, not really present, but adding subtle nuances. Didn't really want any, traditional crystal caramel malt in it. I just like a little bit of honey malt, because it adds a little bit of sweetness, but not too much, not overpowering. I think it works well with the hops. I mean, it's kind of like my standard IPA recipe, except I typically don't use the Pilsner malt. So the box says, got some coconut aroma as a warm, but couldn't get much, if any, coconut on the taste. So the homebrew version had more coconut flavor than the commercial Stone version. Do you think it just didn't scale, or were there other issues? Love the beer regardless, solid IPA. Yeah, we didn't get as much coconut character as we wanted. In the homebrew version, you can smell it and you can taste it. It's pretty obvious. Fortunately, with the Stone version, I think because the bitterness was more than we would have liked, it kind of like might have covered up some of the coconut. Plus, you're dealing on Stone scale. They they centrifuged the beer and they filtered the beer, so those are factors that are playing into it. I got to try the beer before it got filtered, and it did have a bit more coconut than the finished beer that got packaged up. But that being said, I've had variations between bottle and keg. For some, I get very little coconut, and then some, like the video I posted out of the bottle, I could smell it and I could taste it. It just wasn't a huge factor in the beer. But I can understand if you like, I've been drinking this beer as it's progressed and everything, so I can kind of look around and kind of go around some of the big bitterness and some of the hop character, try to seek out that coconut character, and because I kind of know what it's doing with the beer. It's certainly adding a little bit of natural sweetness and mouthfeel to the beer. The coconut itself is unsweetened though, but you do get some, as you toast it, you kind of bring out some nice oils, gives you a little bit of sweetness, gives you some nice toastiness. That's something I noticed. You can't necessarily get like what you expect from like a coconut extract character. It will give it some nice toastiness that you might get in certain like grains. I'll get that definitely in the flavor and aroma. So Raining on Your Parade says, when are you sending me a ball or more? Sorry. Hopefully you can find it. No contest. I think I mentioned this a while ago that I was going to do a contest, and I couldn't come up with anything to do it to ship out the beer, and I figured, well, it's going to hit like 40 states. I figure most of you are going to have a shot at getting it, so I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything. What rating do you give the beer? I have no idea. I can't rate it. I'm too biased. Are you going to review it? Well, I kind of reviewed it. Odeed wants to know, will it be available in a 40-ounce bottle? Yeah, I wish. That would be awesome. I'd love to see a bunch of the malt liquor drinkers chugging a bottle of that. That'd be pretty cool. So Savage 1005 wants to know how much coconut to use in a 5-gallon batch. Well, I use 12 ounces at flame out, so I'm actually whirlpooling. I have a very fine mesh bag. I take 12 ounces of the coconut, the Bob's Red Mill macaroon style unsweetened coconut. It's organic too, which helps. No sulfites, any of that preservative stuff in there. Not interested in any of that. Just use the organic stuff. It's not even that expensive. It's like less than $3.50 a pack. Toast that in the oven very lightly. I'll typically put it on like a tin that's got like maybe about 1.5 inches high around the lip. Put some foil down, put the coconut on there. I'll toast it about 180, 190 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 15 minutes. Then I'll mix it around and I'll just kind of let it toast. You'll know when it's starting to get there when you smell it. And then, but you don't want it to get too dark or too brown, just lightly toasted. So 12 ounces of that. At flame out, I'll let it steep for about 15 minutes. Then the other 12 ounces will go into kegging, and I'll let it sit on the coconut for anywhere from 5 to 7 days. And if you're not kegging, then I would add it with a dry hop and then see what that does. You might let it. You might want to put it in before the dry hop. I don't know. It depends. I haven't done it that method where you're going to be bottling the beer afterwards, so I wouldn't know the time scale on that. But typically, when the beer's kegged, the beer's cold, so the extraction is going to be a little different rate. So I'm going through some other comments. Some of the people, a lot of you have like some of the same questions, so I'm just kind of going through who posted them first. A lot of you are interested in a live cast, so I think we'll have to do it. That'll be fun. Hopefully, a lot of you will be able to watch that, and hopefully the beer's finally hitting some of your markets, because it's been a couple weeks now. So hopefully it's starting to make its rounds out, in the Midwest, East Coast area, South. The other thing I should mention is I wrote for the local beer publication here, West Coaster. I write for them monthly. I do a homebrew column. I think it was the July issue or August. I can't remember at this point. But I wrote a whole article on like how this beer came about, how I met Robert, how we got together and created the beer. Go check that out on westcoastersd.com. And I think it was the August issue, but I could be wrong. It might have been July. I'm getting the months mixed up. But you can find it there, read it online, and that will give you a big backstory to how this came about. Okay, yeah, so more people asking for the recipe. If you're an extract brewer, you know what? I forget what you can steep and what you can't with this beer. Obviously, you're just going to use whatever light extract. Just kind of skip out on dealing with the Pilsner. Just, add that into your just base malt. Munich, I think you can steep. Carapils, I think you can as well, but I could be wrong. And honey malt, I think you have to mash. So you might want to sub in just a very light, like 10 Lovibond crystal malt to steep it. Just try something like that as like substitutions. I forget the ratio between grain and extract, but the conversions are out there to find on the internet. So Matt Me commented that the beer is really hoppy and bitterness lingers on the palate, referring to the stone version. I wonder if that causes coconuts to be more faint. I would think so, yeah. In the homebrew versions, I would maybe tend to get a little bit of maybe extra bitterness, or maybe a little bit of like piney, resiny, or say like spicy herbal character. And when after adding the coconut, we kind of discovered that the coconut would kind of cover up some of those characteristics that we weren't interested in. It would bring forth the fruitier tropical fruit character of the hops. So I think that the fact that the stone version is much more bitter, they listed at like 90 IBUs. I thought we were somewhere around like 85. Last I had heard, talked with the brewing team there. So it's definitely more than we'd like. I think if you do, as the beer ages, potentially the bitterness might subside more and more coconut will come forward. At least that's what we're hoping. So the Boogeyman one says, how do you determine how much coconut to add to the batch? Well, I mentioned that for the homebrew version. And we ended up doing 240 pounds of coconut in the 120 barrel batch at Stone in the Whirlpool, but it just didn't add a whole lot of flavor. I mean, that's 2 pounds per barrel, and it didn't do a whole lot. So most of the coconut had to be added at the bright tanks, and it just didn't get to the levels that we quite wanted compared to the homebrew version. So yeah, we did want it more coconut forward, to answer your question. So a lot of the other comments are people enjoying the beer. Glad you guys did. It's been a blast. It's been a hell of a learning experience for me. It's been a ton of fun. Robin and I were trying to use our 15 minutes of fame as best we can. In my case, doing a lot of these YouTube videos on the beer. A lot of you guys are interested. We'll do a live cast. It's been fun running into people around town here in San Diego that either know me from the video that Stone did. The video is awesome. If you haven't seen Stone's promotional video for the Coconut IPA, go check that out. It was really well done. We were stoked to see that up on the internet. That was awesome. You know, some people recognize me from Greg's videos, the little back and forth we did. I should do another whole video on how that went down, and maybe I still will. And or just watching, you know, the beer reviews. So glad you guys are liking it. I think the beer, you know, overall, I can nitpick it however I want, you know, but in the end, I think it turned out to be a pretty damn good IPA. So hopefully everyone's enjoying it. And you know, it's a one-time deal probably for a lot of you across the country. We're hoping maybe the beer will come back at some point locally, but no details at this point. But we're hoping it will be back. If not, I will be trying to, you know, I wanted to take a break from brewing the beer, but between family, friends, everyone out there wanting to trade for it, I'll probably end up brewing it far more often than I'd actually like to, because I'd like to brew some other beers, and you guys are not letting me do that, unfortunately. But everyone seems to love the beer, so thanks for watching, thanks for buying the beer, thanks for the support. Until next time, cheers.